43. The Domino Effect. The serving of the divorce papers triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. As the first domino fell, it set off a devastating landslide of consequences that would ravage our lives and reduce our marriage to nothing but rubble. Each toppled domino reverberated through our existence, unleashing a maelstrom of emotional turmoil, financial devastation, and psychological distress. The relentless crashing of the dominoes echoed through our minds like a death knell, tolling the demise of our toxic relationship and the destruction of the fragile, fragmented life we had built together. As every door was tested and every sacred cow slaughtered, the trail of devastation and destruction rippled out to everything and everyone I held dear. The ferocity and intensity of it all were overwhelming, nailing me to the cross of self-crucifixion. Yet, in this darkness, I discovered a profound truth. I had to die to my old self so that I could be reborn. I had to surrender, letting go of everything that held me back so that I could spread my wings and soar free. As the catastrophes intensified, the sacred voice inside me whispered words of encouragement. Leap over the edge, Alyosika, leap. As you fall, you shall rise. As you fall, I will catch you. No harm shall come to you. No harm. You are going through the eye of the needle. You are being stripped bare of everything and everyone. This is as it should be. It's part of your journey. Embrace it. Learn from it. Grow through it. No harm shall come to you. Believe. One evening, I stumbled upon a YouTube video about narcissistic abuse. I was riveted as the pieces finally fell into place, and I understood for the first time that my marriage and relationship with Henny were never going to improve. I was astonished that I had never heard of narcissistic abuse before, despite it being the key to understanding everything I had endured with Henny. Yet again, my inner voice whispered that this was all part of my life's mission. With this newfound understanding, I felt a surge of empowerment, knowing that I had the power to break free from the toxic cycle. As I navigated this tumultuous period, my relationships with those around me soon began to fray. My relationship with Mom Doreen started showing cracks, revealing a burdened journey she shared with Albie, marked by unresolved pain, trauma, and a complete inability to see eye to eye. I found myself caught in the middle, my heart yearning to understand Albie, with whom I could relate and discuss matters. In contrast, Mom Doreen seemed unwilling to confront her inner world, instead choosing to bury, brush over, and dismiss her emotions. Esther Marie completely collapsed under the pressure, leading to her suspension of her second-year undergraduate law studies. I felt a mix of emotions, but relief was predominant, and for two reasons. Firstly, I had always doubted that a career in law would be the best fit for her, despite Henny's enthusiasm when she chose to study law in 2017. However, her academic performance told a different story. She excelled in her first year, earning a spot in the prestigious Golden Key International Honor Society, which recognizes the top 15% of students worldwide. Despite this impressive achievement, in her second year, she was pushed to the brink by Henny's relentless emotional abuse. The final blow came in April when he sent her a devastating WhatsApp message blaming her for his suffering during the divorce. He shamelessly implied that she should perjure herself by lying under oath in a sworn affidavit to defend him. Her refusal to comply with this outrageous demand sparked a severe emotional crisis. I immediately rushed the 400 kilometers to Stellenbosch the next morning to offer her comfort and support. Shortly after, she made the difficult decision to suspend her studies. My second reason for relief was financial. I knew that divorcing Henny would be a costly and draining process. Esther Marie's financial obligations were substantial, and I had always covered her expenses, including her car premium and insurance, cell phone contract, accommodation, textbooks, food, and pocket money. Notably, I had been operating solely on faith when it came to my finances, trusting that my needs would be met. Throughout my life, I had maintained an open hand, giving freely whenever required, and I had consistently been rewarded for my obedience. However, the financial burden of the divorce weighed heavily on me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Esther Marie's expectations were becoming increasingly entitlement-driven. As I reflected on our complicated past, I began to notice a disturbing trend. A sense of callousness and expectation that I would provide indefinitely. This realization saddened me deeply, and I feared that our relationship was heading towards a catastrophic and irreversible breakdown. The emotional divide between us was growing at an alarming rate, and I worried that it might be too late to repair. This sense of unease was not limited to my relationship with Esther Marie. I began to notice a similar pattern in my interactions with Gurik. He seemed completely disconnected from my reality, preoccupied with his own life and busy surviving and building a future for himself. As a result, he appeared somewhat cold and calloused about my impending divorce. What struck me, however, was that Gurik's expectations of me, in terms of financial provision, mirrored Esther Marie's. Both seemed to assume that I would be an endless source of financial support, with no expectation of boundaries or reciprocity. Most importantly, I felt that both of them lacked a fundamental sense of gratitude for the support I had already provided. For me, gratitude is a core value, one that I hold in the highest esteem. The absence of gratitude in our relationships was a profound disappointment, and one that ultimately contributed to the erosion of our bonds. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, Natasha's phone calls became a source of dread. I had assigned a special ringtone to her profile, which to this day still evokes a visceral response. The moment I hear it, my heart starts pounding and my chest tightens. Her words, though well-intentioned, were always laced with a sense of impending doom. Each call brought news of Henny's latest manipulative tactics, expertly exploiting every legal loophole to stall the proceedings. He skillfully painted himself as the victim, and me as the villain. His demands were outrageous, and as predicted, his actions were cleverly designed to delay the process. Our marriage contract, signed in 1994, had stipulated that we would be married out of community of property without accrual. This decision, made at Henny's insistence, would ultimately prove to be a source of regret for him. At the time, he had convinced me that this was necessary, citing his fear that I would leave him after a few months and take half of his assets. As I reflected on the terms of our marriage contract, I began to realize that my connection to Oudtshoorn was also coming to an end. The realization dawned on me that Oudtshoorn would soon become too small to contain the toxic legacy of our marriage. I knew that to truly shatter the chains of my past, I might have to make the heart-wrenching decision to close the doors on my business and bid farewell to my beloved childhood home. It was a choice that would sever the last threads of my connection to the life I once knew. Two pivotal moments stood out during this tumultuous first half of 2018. A transformative hypnotherapy session with Christy and a revelatory telephone call with a clairvoyant, courtesy of Albie's referral.